You're watching the Tampa Bay wind report update for Friday, December the 4th. Let's talk about the winds and weather for tonight and tomorrow for the Santa Jam that's going to be going on. I still have faith that you're going to have some decent winds tomorrow. Let's get into it. We're going to look at the surface map. Here's our high pressure building to the north. It's about 1,036 millibars, so it is growing in strength, and it's forcing a northeast wind down the coastline all the way down into Tampa Bay. So we're starting to see some of those elevations now. Now earlier, there was a little bit of a low pressure kink developing right here along southern Florida, and that was affecting the gradient in this area of Tampa Bay. So we want to keep watching that. This little area right here with a warm front, piece of a warm front over warmer waters. There's a little bit of storm activity, a little bit of rain down there. We want to watch this area. The GFS model was developing this very slowly over about a 2 to 3 day run, and then developing up the east coast into South Carolina, and then all the way up the eastern seaboard, and kind of bombing out as a coastal nor'easter. So it looks like that scenario is a little bit less likely at this point. The surface low that was there has now moved along the boundary off the coastline. So it looks like things are starting to relax to the south as far as the rain and the storm activity, which is a good thing because we need that high pressure to wedge down into this area. So there's some cross-cutting going on. We have surface flow coming down in this direction. Then we also have an upper level flow, mid to upper level jet that is really cranking up from this direction all the way across the area actually. And that's keeping cloud tops down from vertical stacking. It's now allowing thunderstorms to really build to the south, and that's a good thing because that prevents low pressure, surface low pressure, from developing down that way. So anytime you get within a certain radius of low pressures and where high pressure is wedging down and creating a gradient, sometimes that loosens the gradient and causes some complications. It's complex in nature, but just know that it relaxes the gradient and ultimately it brings the winds down. So let's take a look at the GRE on radar, and we can see not very much activity going on over Tampa Bay. Some clouds, some things are starting to move out of place, or the clouds are starting to move out of the area. You have moisture coming up from the southwest to the northeast. Here's that northeasterly surface flow drawing some of that moisture down off the Gulf Stream down into Palm Coast and northern Florida, and then ultimately a little bit picking up down across just south of Tampa Bay. So that's where that crosscut is, the upper level shear going on across Cape Coral and down into this area of Florida. If we look at infrared, you can see some of that cloud cover is thinning out over over Tampa Bay. And let's take a look at water vapor imagery. Here's the orange line. That's your cool, dry air where that gradient is going to be the most effective. So I'm thinking that line will reach Tampa Bay overnight and should get pretty sunny, and the wind should pick up and be a little bit more steady without that clouding in the area. So it looks pretty favorable for things tomorrow. I'm going to try to maintain composure on this and keep the winds up in the forecast. If you look at the SPC, we call this the MESS analysis, where we look at the upper level shear. We got about 50 to about 80 or 90 knots of wind in the mid to upper level. This is about 18 to 30,000 feet up. Go back to the surface though and look at what's going on. I always like to look at this map because it really captures it updates every couple of minutes or so. And it shows some of the activity. So a lot of storm activity to the south is just not holding on. We want to definitely watch it though for any low pressures that develop. Let's take a look at Datascope with weather flow. Let this load. Now as the sun goes down, the visible imagery flips over to more of an infrared imagery, so that's why you see that line coming across the screen. You can see some of that cross-cutting of upper level clouding coming up from the southwest and northeast, and then some of that clouding diving down from the northeast along that high pressure. And if we look in, let me disable the radar and the satellite, and we can start looking into the Tampa Bay area. Let's dive down in and see what's going on. I saw 18 knots earlier in the Tampa Bay Cut J. I'm going to use that station. Seems like this middle Tampa Bay sensor is kind of on and off for today. I'm not sure if that's wind related, but right now we're showing 21 knots at Tampa Bay Cut J, and we're showing 21 with gusts up to 25 knots. So we're definitely seeing where that gradient's increasing over the area where that cooler and drier line of air that I showed you on the water vapor loop a little bit ago. You can look at it one more time, where that cool dry air is starting to move into the area. That is where the gradient's going to pick up and the winds are going to be a little bit more stable. So going back to Datascope, I'm going to go ahead and look at the details for Tampa Bay Cut J. Now here's your model run. There's a lot of disagreement on speeds still for tomorrow. I think some of these models are still kind of capturing some of that rain to come up from the south, or maybe a kink of low pressure developing along that boundary to the south. But the GFS and WaveWatch 3 models are keeping the winds elevated through tomorrow. So lots of agreement on directions here. You can see they're all pretty much in agreement on that. But as far as speeds, let me blow this up a little bit and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It looked like the North American model, the NAM 5K, really kind of got a gist of what the winds were doing this afternoon, or this morning and this afternoon. So it does have some build, late morning to midday lull, and that's what the North American model 5 kilometer is showing. If we look at the HER 3 kilometer, the first tomorrow, it's still keeping winds up 19 to 20 knots. So this one only goes out so far because it's such a high resolution model, and I can't get too much detail out of that unless we look at it on the line, on the timeline. But here is the GFS, the one that I kind of banked on a little bit more, and this one still shows 18, 19 knots. So what I called earlier on Wednesday for winds to be 22 to 27 knots, that's not quite out of the picture yet. We could still see that, especially since we're seeing 21 knots now. As far as tomorrow, I think we're looking at a scenario where we're going to have some upper teens to low 20s. We may see 20 to 24 knots occur where some of that drier air is. So I think we've got a pretty good shot at keeping the winds on the table for tomorrow for the Santa Jam. So I'm going to keep my original forecast that I changed last night, dropped it down a couple knots to 20 to 24 knots, northeast winds, maybe leaning a little bit east-northeast. Slight possibility, I'm going to keep about medium to high confidence on that forecast, with a very slight possibility that could see a little bit of a lull by late morning to midday and then recover again sometime early to mid-afternoon. So I think you're looking in pretty good shape for the Santa Jam kite tomorrow, and I think that's going to do it for the Tampa Bay wind report. If anything changes drastically by the morning, I'll try to do an update for you. I'll take a look at things first thing in the morning early and see what's going on there. But until then, if nothing changes and everything looks good, you guys have a great Santa Jam. Good luck and have fun. Have a good night. Thanks for watching.